to know how the hell are parents going to respond when their children, as they get older, start questioning what happened to the times that we spent with our grandparents and great-grandparents. What about all the Christmases? What about all the birthdays? How are those parents going to answer those questions?
That's fear-mongering. This is the thing that estranged parents do. They identify a fear that their estranged adult child has. So, for example, I'm depriving my children of their grandparents. And the truth of the matter is, we're not depriving our children of their grandparents. Their grandparents choosing to behave the way they do is the grandparents depriving themselves of access and relationships, not just with their grandchildren, also their adult children, who they seem to bypass. Okay, you're not talking to me, but I want access to my grandchild. And there's a triangulation in there that I think a lot of people don't catch. I can live without you, but I can't live without them. I love you, but I love them more. And that's the thing that's going on within what this person is talking about. And if she genuinely wonders, I mean, she can watch my content. I don't think she's going to like me very much. I don't think I like her very much based on what I'm seeing. I mean, I don't know who she is as a human, but I do know she's following patterns of opinions that are expressed by a lot of the estranged parents who really don't feel like just because they don't get along with their adult child, that means that they should, they don't feel like they should be denied access to the grandchildren who actually don't belong to them, that they're not entitled to a relation. We're not entitled to any relationships. However, at the end of the day, if it's parents or grandparents, obviously the parents are the central figures, the more important ones. And they're also the ones, so I don't know, let's just not overlook the fact that they brought the children into the world to begin with, right? And so she follows a pattern of spoken opinions that I hear a lot in the estrangement community from parents who are not going to be able to repair their relationships as long as this is how they feel and think about them. And by and large, this comes from a place of their own upbringing, right? Of them staying in relationships with parents who didn't treat them well or were abusive, who in their adult life continued to behave badly, and they stuck in those relationships because those are their parents. And maybe they didn't think they had any other way of going, or maybe they've martyred themselves to the point of, but I stayed in it because it's my parents and therefore you should too. These things don't just come out of nowhere. They come from a place for the estranged parents. I see it with the estranged parents that I have in my counseling practice. Most of my practice is adult estranged children, adult children who are in low contact, adult children who want to maintain relationships with their parents and learn how to navigate them in a way that they can have the pleasure of that relationship and not the pain of that relationship. In all cases, the clients that I have, or the majority, I don't like absolutes, come from some sort of narcissistic system where they were touched by that type of abuse, usually by their parent. So just as a little bit of background, the estranged parents that I have are more likely than not going to be able to repair their relationships because they're coming to therapy and they're actually being honest. Not because I'm going to do something for them, but because they are working on themselves and they are choosing that. And they are curious enough to go, okay, I may not understand because my adult child didn't say, I'm not going to speak to you if you don't do, or if you do X, Y, and Z. They may not have had that outright threat, which most of the time doesn't exist. It's more of a withdrawing and moving backwards or away from that relationship for estranged adult children. A lot of them don't make that threat because they're not interested in making that threat. They're not interested in ultimatums. They're hoping that, their parent who is likely highly dysregulated will see that they're not sharing the way that they used to share. They're not as open with them, and they're hoping that that parent will either get the message or ask the right questions to open the dialogue. They are trying to talk to their parents. It's not like you can really say, I have no clue whatsoever. And I know this to be fact for the most part. Again, I don't like absolutes. And the reason that I say that is when an estranged parent comes to me and goes, I don't know what I did, and we start to unpack things, they go, oh yeah, okay, now I know what I did. They may not have known it in that moment, but they're open to figuring it out, and they do see their part to play in the, I don't really want to say demise of the relationship, because in the first 3 years, the relationship isn't dead. It's like in a holding pattern, even if it's complete no contact. In my experience, most estranged adult children in the first 3 years come back in. And if an estranged parent out there gets into therapy during that period of time to at least learn what are some of the things that I can do to make the most out of the opportunity when my adult child comes back, so that I can show up in a way where at least we can begin to work on our relationship, right? So anyway, what are estranged adult children going to tell their children when they grow up about what they got deprived of and what their parent did to them? That's what she's saying, right? And at the end of the day, I have 3 adult children. One who actually had a relationship in her adult life with my mother, because she had a relationship in her childhood life with my mother and my grandmother. And what we told our children all the way through when the topic came up. So she's assuming that these kids are really wondering about this. And most of the time, you know, when they wonder when they see other families that are bigger than ours. They wonder, you know, and like even meeting cousins and extended family and all of that. And that's something that looks enjoyable. Who wouldn't want to have that? I wish I had that. It comes up because of stupid school projects, sometimes family tree stuff. I hate those projects. I would like to see those projects dead forever, because there are children who have lost their parents to not being alive anymore. There's children in foster care who have had multiple foster parents and all these things. There's children who have no way to connect to get answers to those questions. Let's not highlight a difference like that. That's just an awful thing to do. Anyway, those are the times that sometimes it comes up. And for my kids, they'd be like, they'd ask a question or two. My eldest daughter in particular, I miss Grandma. Why can't she be around? Those things did happen, for sure. Those questions did occur. And you know what? We talked them through, and my children are between the ages of 33 and about to be 42. And my grandchildren are teenagers. One is left for university yesterday. And none of them have ever said, I feel like I lost out on something. They have said, I wish that we had extended family like other people. Like, that looks like it would have been fun. And also, I'm really happy that I had parents who loved me. And like, they literally put all these pieces together. We have conversations around this. And in no world are any of my children coming back to me, and I know a lot of other parents out there who have had the same experience, and saying, you did this to me. It's not happening. And it's not because I vilified my mother. When my children were my grandparents, my children didn't know that my grandparents molested me until they were adults. They didn't know the extent of the abuse that I went through until they were fully formed adults. We aren't interested in trashing the people we're not in a relationship with. We're not smear campaigning. And this is something that an estranged parent can't conceptualize. They are assuming that the way that we might share what's going on in that situation with other adults, confiding in them, getting support, things like that, is the same way that we are communicating with our children, because that's what they did to us, and that's what they do to us. Let's carry on, shall we?
I feel our fear is that there are going to be emotional confusions and loyalty binds.
Can you hear the emotion in her voice? Can you imagine her as a parent? Like, she's making this video voluntarily and she's struggling to regulate. Like, she just cracked. A lot of times with these estranged parents, some estranged parents, I don't like to paint everybody with the same brush, right? They will do the, oh, what are our children going to think? And they'll like flatline, butter wouldn't melt in my mouth kind of voice. And they've got a real groove on that. And this one, she's not got that groove. So I don't know. I just find that a little interesting. Also, has anybody noticed how a lot of the estranged parents, I feel like the majority of them, like this kind of estranged parent, because there are estranged parents creating content going, yeah, I know what I did and I regret what I did and I'm in therapy for what I did. There are actually some estranged parents who are recognizing their own emotional immaturity. And by the way, been there, done that. My own daughter, my eldest, didn't talk to me for a couple of years, around 20 years ago. She was in a relationship with my mother at the time. However, if I had been emotionally mature and an emotionally mature therapized parent by the time I had her, my mother wouldn't have been able to create any cracks. That was on me. I'm not blaming that on my mother. I take accountability for that. I was 17 when I had my eldest daughter. I didn't go into therapy till she was 11 years old, and that's just the beginning of therapy. And there are definitely things I did that were very self-centered, that weren't the way that a child should be parented. Am I saying that I abused my daughter? Absolutely not. And I know that she would agree with that. And the proof is in the pudding. I have a book, and she was the editor of my book, and she wrote the foreword, as did one of my other children. My son also wrote the foreword. Both of them love to write. And so the proof is in the pudding there. There wasn't a situation of child abuse. There was a situation of passing down trauma, of times where I didn't even recognize that my children were triggering my wounds, or that I was parenting through what I felt they would feel, and bubble wrapping even at times because of my own experience. I didn't know that I was doing that, and I therefore didn't know how to separate the two. Anywho, her voice speaks a story to me of your adult child comes to you and that voice comes into play, and immediately that adult child is going, oh, I've heard this before, I'm in trouble now. You know, our bodies recognize and remember all of our experiences, and that means good ones and bad ones. It's not just, it doesn't cherry pick. And so I would imagine if I was her adult child trying to create a boundary and that voice came into play, I would be like, danger, danger, uh-oh, this isn't going well. And I'd probably abandon it, to the point where eventually, the low contact starts to happen. Oh, that's what I was going to say. In that period of low contact, when that adult child is taking more distance, if they're finding more peace than missing you, if they're finding that their life is improving without you because they're not being criticized and hurt and made to feel like there's something wrong with them, then that distance is going to grow larger. I mean, doesn't that make sense? That's a lot of times where the actual estrangement is born. It isn't always from a place of the last straw. It's mostly from a place of, oh, well, I haven't spoken to her in 3 weeks, or him in 3 weeks, and wow, like, life's actually really peaceful. Maybe I'll go another week. And then before you know it, weeks turn into months, and months turn into years, and therapy and all the things. And it just feels like, well, why would I be in a relationship with someone that I have to tolerate their behavior rather than enjoy the connection, especially when it's my own parent?
There are going to be emotional confusions and loyalty binds with our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. We do not want our grandchildren to feel torn between parents and unknown grandparents and great-grandparents. Or maybe they used to be able to hang out with their grandparents and great-grandparents, and then that was just fucking severed.
So they're concerned. By the way, she speaks for all estranged parents, apparently. Everybody knows. Everybody agrees with me that you're doing something wrong. Sound familiar? Okay. Yeah. Everybody knew I was damaged goods. Did you know that? I was like 9. I didn't even know what that meant. I knew it wasn't good. Anywho, so they're worried, all of them, that the children are going to experience divided loyalties between their parents and people they've never met before. Okay, I got nothing on that. But then she's going into the ones that they have met. So let's listen in. Let's see if the math starts to math somewhere.
They used to be able to hang out with their grandparents and great-grandparents, and then that was just fucking severed. And that is what is a real concern that we have. We also do not want our grandchildren or great-grandchildren to experience guilt, confusion, or pressure to completely align with only their parents' views.
Do you hear the estranged parent perspective? They either are going to align over here or over there. She doesn't want them to have divided loyalties, but she doesn't want them to have complete loyalty. Huh? Is that what she really said? Like, that's what it feels like she said. We don't want them to be confused. Well, you know what's really confusing? I might have to go back and listen to that. I'm confused. I don't think I'm going to bother going back to listen to that. It's really confusing to a child who loves their parent, who does align with their parent, whose values should come primarily from their parents, and hopefully they're not parents like this. That's not the same thing as blind obedience, by the way, which is what these estranged parents, these types of estranged parents are really looking for. They're looking to be all-powerful, central, and that they can do whatever they want, and they don't pay consequences in any way, shape, or form, right? And so do you not think that it's phenomenally confusing for a child who loves a grandparent who shows disdain for their parent who they also love? Do you not think that it is confusing for a child to receive love from that grandparent and from their parents and not understand what's so good about them that the grandparent can love them and what's so bad about their parent that the grandparent who they love can't love them? Are you following along? Like, do we not think, apparently this estranged parent does not think, well, she speaks for all of them, that children are watching relationships and seeing how the adults in the room are treating each other and what people are supposed to tolerate and what love looks like? Do you not think it's confusing? Because if you don't, you're just really looking at things from this tunnel vision of, I want what I want right now. You know, you're being a toddler, really. You're being an egocentric toddler, which is fine if you were actually 2 years old, but phenomenally, there goes the word again, dangerous when you're an adult who's supposed to be role modeling healthy relationships and behaviors to those grandchildren that you profess to love so deeply. My eldest daughter watched my mother's disdain for me and for her husband at the time, step-grandfather. There's been a few husbands in my mother's life and fewer who have escaped with their lives. Yeah, that's another story for another day. My daughter has told me in the recent years, I would say probably last year, maybe the year before, yeah, Mom, I felt really guilty and I was also confused. And I'm like, by what? I'm asking her. I want to know what her perspective was. We talk about that. I know it's shocking. We talk about this stuff. And she said, well, I remember watching your mother, well, we call her by her first name, and I'm not going to do that on here. I remember watching her and seeing that she didn't like my brother. I'm like, did you actually know that? Or is that something maybe you're remembering because you've heard things? And she's like, no, I remember, because there were times you weren't there and he and I were there with grandmother and step-grandfather, and step-grandfather would be playing with him and hanging out, and grandmother would walk by and make faces. And she said, I remember that I would get fed first and I would get the biggest piece of cake and he would get a little something, and I can remember his face. I can remember feeling guilty and bad for him and not understanding why he wasn't getting the similar kind of love to me. She said, I didn't think about it as love at the time. I just thought about it as, why isn't he getting what I'm getting? And she had contrast, right? She had a contrasting experience in her home with her parents that she saw, well, really parent, because I was a single parent at the time, where she saw that they both got love and affection and hugs and fed, and, you know, maybe the plates didn't go down at exactly the same time, but, you know, one kid wasn't going to get 2 cookies and the other one get 1. They're 3.5 years apart, right? Like, that doesn't work that way. They both got their special time individually. Like, my son went to bed earlier. He was younger. He got his own storybook. My daughter got to bed later and she got her own storybook. She saw a contrasting treatment that allowed her to have the space to question what was going on with my mother. She would see my mother speak to me in ways, make faces at me, behind her back even, tell my daughter to keep secrets from me, as if there was something wrong with me. And it did make her question, what was it that I did wrong for my mother to treat me that way, because my mother was so good to her? That's what children do actually notice in these relationships. And you know, the words that she was left with from that she said to me without any prompting whatsoever, I felt guilty and I felt confused. And I have to tell you, it broke my heart that I exposed my daughter to my mother, because I never put those pieces together. I was going to say just happy, but I wasn't just happy. I'll go with the 2 emotions that I felt in connection to these relationships. On the one hand, I was so happy to see that my mother could love my daughter, and that relationship that was forming that I never had with her. And when my son was born and came into the picture, that's where things started to crack, because I started to see what was happening in the different treatment of them. And that's where my boundary setting began. That, and not telling my daughter to keep secrets, not letting a 5-year-old watch Poltergeist and Dirty Dancing. I mean, there were other things in there, but that's where it really began. And on the other hand, I was really sad that I did not get her as my mother. You know, the grandmother she was being. I didn't feel jealous of my daughter. I just felt sad for me. And it also drove me to continue to try to earn my mother's favor, because I thought, well, if it's in there for my daughter, maybe she'll see that maybe I'm damaged goods, but I'm still somewhere good enough to be her daughter. And before somebody asked me, well, why did you expose them after everything your mother did to you? It's because I knew I deserved what my mother did to me, and I knew that my children did not. I still saw myself as being faulty, as being deserving of what my mother did, as being unlovable. I didn't understand or connect to the fact that I was just a little child like my children were. I hadn't put those pieces together yet and hadn't gone to therapy yet. It took time for that to kick in. If I had gone to therapy earlier and realized that there was nothing that I could have done as a child to change my mother's behavior, and that it was indeed my mother who was at fault, I definitely would not have exposed my children to my mother or any part of that system for even a moment in time. I truly didn't understand that it was not my fault.
Talking about free choice, we want our grandchildren and great-grandchildren to be able to hear both sides, both truths. And we want them to not have to feel that they have to align either with only their grandparents and great-grandparents or their parents. Because quite frankly, we as grandparents and great-grandparents, we want them to have a great relationship with both parties. Both parties. For us, it's not an all or nothing thing. Now, with the estranged children and, what's going on in that community, it is like all or nothing. There is no compromise. None whatsoever.
We don't compromise the things that are acceptable for our children to be exposed to. Nope. We don't. We should not. It's our job as parents to make sure that our children are exposed to healthy role models and that they learn that love is not pain. Love is not disrespect. Love is not lack of accountability. Love is not freely given, it's earned. The only time love is freely given is from parent to child. That's not earned love. Children don't earn love. Parents should be earning love. That's my opinion. If I had a magic wand and I could parent all over again, I would parent from the perspective of wanting my children to feel proud of me instead of me raising them to feel like they need to make me proud. That is one thing that I would absolutely alter in my parenting style. Because I think role modeling, being a healthy, accountable person, not that I wasn't accountable, but I mean a healthy person, automatically would make your children proud, right? Modeling maturity automatically would make your children proud. Modeling good behaviors, healthy behaviors, I hate good and bad kind of thing, would automatically give to your child a really good blueprint. And, really what she wants is to be able to behave any way she chooses and have access to her grandchildren with zero accountability. What is there to compromise? Let's find out. Let's see if she says what there is to compromise. I'm really interested. Because usually when I hear that, and I have heard this video before, but the thing is that I listened to them once, I saved them, and now I go back to them.
For us, it's not an all or nothing thing.
Oh, because we don't want to have a great relationship with our own parents, because we want to walk through life without family, because we want to sit at the holidays and have people ask us, oh, are you going to go spend time with your family? And be in a situation where we have to figure out what we want to say about that or not say, because we don't feel lonely or sad, or we're not grieving the living, right? We're not going through any of that. We've walked away and everything is fine. The minimization of the experience that estranged children go through, estranged adult children go through after taking the steps of going no contact is just jaw-dropping to me. I know that these estranged parents like this one, they watch our content and they're feeding off of our content every bit as much as I'm feeding off of hers to create awareness around this topic. However, I'm doing it from a different perspective for a different reason. I'm not doing it to dig my heels in. I'm doing it because I know that there's estranged parents out there who follow people who are where they are rather than where they want to be. And I would like to see more healing of relationships. That's part of the reason I do what I do. I also do what I do because I'm healing. And when I talk about my experiences, that's helpful to me. I find it helpful to have a community of people be able to come together and validate one another that we're not freaking crazy. Her not talking about the fact that we experience a great loss of what our future looks like. The times that one of my kids lost a tooth, did well in school, and other people get to call their parent and go, oh, this is what so-and-so did today. And I didn't have that. I would melt down in tears over that sometimes because I just wanted to be able to call my mom and have that experience. And this is such a bright spot in time in my life. And I can't share it with the person who should be one of the most important people to me. What the fuck? You don't get the loss that we go through? And you created that loss because you created the foundation for the relationship that developed. We were children. And then on top of that, when we became adults, you decided you weren't going to grow like into an adult along with us. Like, these are emotionally immature people, right? And so what they do is they stay in the same place that they were when we were children. And they assume that we're in the same place or treat us like we're in the same place. So when we become adults, they're still parenting. I use the term loosely. My mother never parented. From the same perspective, even though we are autonomous adults, which they tried to stop us from being many, many times. And what about the fact that we have to grieve the loss of never knowing what it would be like to have a healthy parent, to have a safe childhood, to maybe not have complex PTSD, which I have. What about all of that? You know, they talk about their grief and their loss and how they want everybody to have a good relationship, but they don't want to do anything to contribute to making that relationship good. We're supposed to compromise and suck it up. That's it. That's all. Right? Yeah. I'm angry. And I'm okay with being angry. My thought there was like, oh, did I just do the voice she did? No. Well, maybe a little bit, but not for the same reason in the same way. So I'm just going to have to be okay with that. I'm snarky sparky.
Now, with the estranged children and, you know, what's going on in that community, it is like all or nothing. There is no compromise. None whatsoever, which is a damn shame. My final thing that I want to point out today is that we are very concerned about the fact that we as grandparents and great-grandparents, that we are not able to share our family history and culture with our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I loved sitting with my great-great-grandmother and learning about how her life was when she was young and what experiences she experienced. Same with my grandfather and great-grandfather. Those were priceless memories to me.
I loved sitting with my great-grandmother. She used to watch me in the play yard from her balcony when I went to nursery school. And I would look up and wave at her, and I'm Jewish and I went to a Catholic nursery school, and one of the nuns was particularly mean to me, not because I was Jewish, just because she was particularly mean. And I would look up at my great-grandmother for comfort, right? I didn't articulate it, so my great-grandmother didn't even know I was looking at her for comfort. And yeah, I'm heartbroken that my children didn't get any of the goodness of the people that I felt good about. Yeah, I'm heartbroken that I didn't come from a family where my children could have those experiences, or where I could have those experiences. I'm heartbroken that I don't have people in my life outside of a babysitter who've known me since the day that I was born, who could tell me stories about me and share stories about, you know, what my mother was like, or my grandmother was like, or this person or that person. I'm heartbroken that I don't even fucking want those stories because of how incredibly horrible these people were to me. So she can fuck right off with that. You know, my mother could have chosen to do differently, and I wouldn't be here heartbroken. I don't have control over that, and she's making it seem like the estranged adult children are choosing not to have that. No, they're choosing to rip that away from us and to keep it away. They want good relationships, but they don't want to be accountable in those relationships. I feel like there was something, and it might not have been her video, but I think it's applicable anyway, about the compromise thing. And it might have been her or another creator going, so we fed them a little sugar, even though we know that their parents don't want them to have sugar. Oh, so we let them watch a show that was a little bit, older than their age, even though the parents said specifically, don't let them watch that show again. So, we let them stay up, and past their bedtime, even though they had school the next day, because we were having fun with them. That's what grandparents do. No, it's actually not what grandparents do. There's a difference between, doing little things to spoil a child and have that special, grandma always sneaks me a little candy, okay, whatever. And having, a household where they're very specific about that. For my kids, I didn't want them to have like chocolate and sugar and things like that until they were like 2 or 3 years old. We just didn't want that. Like, it wasn't necessary. I feel like we didn't want them to develop like a sweet tooth around those things. We did fruits and things like that. And then as they got older, they got like Halloween and candy and things like that. And that's just our house. Not right or wrong. That's how we felt about it. And my kids will tell you that they love the fact that they were really exposed to very healthy eating without restriction from other things. They didn't know as little kids that they weren't getting chocolate and stuff like that. And I'm absolutely sure that my mother violated that. And to me, it was like, I don't have control over that. I'm picking my battles, right? It became a habitual behavior though, and a secrecy around it. And that's when these things really start to go sideways. Also, I saw a video about a grandparent who was like, your kid's not allergic, and meantime feeding the child the things that the parents said, listen, here's an EpiPen, and the child ended up having seizures and going to the hospital. This stuff isn't funny. And at the end of the day, you got to parent the way you wanted to parent and you did a lousy job. You don't get to grandparent the way you want to grandparent and continue that lousy job. You have to respect the fact that these are not your children. I remember my late mother-in-law, her memory is a blessing. Sometimes she would live with us for a few months at a time. My mother-in-law, I got along with my mother-in-law. She was wonderful. And she would do this thing where she would sneak the kids. She was Cuban. She didn't really speak much English. I didn't speak much Spanish, but we figured it out. And I just love her dearly. Like, she was a really special person. And she would sneak the kids an extra piece of flan after dinner. But she would like bring me in the kitchen and go, and I'm like, yeah, do it. It's fine. No big deal. Do you see the respect there, the care there? And then she would wink at me as she was doing it. And the kids didn't know that I didn't know. And it wasn't like a big secret. And it was okay. And it was like a fun little thing. And you know what? My kids have really fond memories of that, especially when they got wise to the fact that it wasn't really a secret. That's healthy. This woman, not so healthy. It's not about compromise. It's that we don't want to respect boundaries and you don't want to compromise the boundary. That's really what she's saying, in my opinion. I'm not speaking for all adult estranged children. However, I would love you to comment in and let me know where you agree or disagree and what else you would like to talk about, and maybe things that I missed in this video. Comment in. That helps me continue to, create content for you. Okay, let's finish this one out. Whew, it's a lot.
It's important that our grandchildren have their, that sense of, this is our family culture and this is part of my life.
It's important that they know their family culture up close and personal if it's a healthy culture. Yeah, I'll agree with that. It's definitely important that they're protected from a family culture that is toxic or dangerous or unhealthy, dysfunctional, that sort of thing, right? We should not be exposing children to unhealthy role models because they are learning through observation. And I personally did not want my children to know about some of the things that I went through when I was a child until they were fully formed, because I didn't want them to associate any part of who they were or are with the darkness that I came from, because there's nothing in them that deserves to be associated with that. I hope you kind of get what I'm saying. You know, it's kind of like, I can't imagine for a child who, myself, knowing that my mother has committed a lot of crimes. As a child, I didn't really understand that, and I felt bad enough about myself. I wonder how much worse I would have felt about myself if I knew that my mother was really evil. Like, you know, kids who find out that their parent murdered someone, you think they don't wonder what part of that parent is in them. And so exposing our children to a culture of people that operate like a cult, dysfunctional, abusive, all the things that, you know, have darkness around them, has no benefit to them whatsoever. And it definitely has something that takes value away from them, that is not just having no benefit, but actually can be very detrimental.
I can't imagine that I am the only person on the face of this planet, with the billions of people out there, that would not have that same feeling. It's important that our grandchildren have their, you know, that sense of, this is our family culture and this is part of my life. Heck, it even affects medically, our medical history of our grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And I've just scratched the surface. Anyway, I just want to tell all of y'all, I am so grateful for this platform. I love hearing your stories because I can pray for you. I can empathize with you. And the pictures, they're heartbreaking, but they're beautiful memories. I look forward to talking to you again soon. Until next time, love to all of
you. The pictures. Oh, you mean you're posting pictures of your grandchildren online that you don't have access to and therefore don't have permission to post those pictures? Shocking. Are you posting them so that you can look like you were a good and loving grandparent? Double shocking. Not. Oh, well, I'm glad that she's grateful that she can continue to tell her stories and continue to support Division. I think that's awesome for her. Yeah. What do you think, folks? What do you think of how she speaks and what she says? And you know, I do want to touch on the health thing. You know, there was a time, and I nodded my head when she said that it's true, like it impacts our ability to have an accurate health history. But now that I really think that through, you know, the way that they do like DNA testing now, they can look back and see all the things that you carry. So while that statement was true for me as somebody who went no contact over 30 years ago, and that was something that I did have to confront from time to time. And when I say confront it, more like recognize it, but not be able to do anything about it because I had nobody to call. That isn't true of the generation that we have now. Medical science has progressed to a point that we don't ever have to ask who had what. We can get tested and know what we carry to a degree that even knowing who had what doesn't measure up and touch. Like we can have knowledge of our health history in a way that somebody saying, oh yeah, this might have run in the family can't equate to, right? So yeah, she might want to do a little research around that because I know she's so concerned about these grandchildren. Yeah. I love my grandchildren. I'll do anything except go to therapy. I love my adult children. I'll do anything except go to therapy. I love my grandchildren. I'll do anything except try to respect the boundaries of their parents so I can have access to them. Yeah. I love my children. I'll do anything. Apparently not. You know, apparently not. I'm not saying you don't love them. I am saying you won't do anything or everything that you can to ensure the health of that relationship. And that's why you don't have one.